Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So today we have a guest speaking with us. Her name is Ann Kaiser, and she's a career coach. And we're going to talk a little bit about the subject of salary negotiation, which is really a key part of your career management. And I think oftentimes for students, it's really difficult to understand the magnitude of effect that salary negotiation can have on your career, and even just small differences, particularly from when you're starting your career, can sort of build up and accumulate over time. And so I wrote this down just so I make sure I get it right. But imagine two different scenarios where you get a starting offer at $45,000 a year and you get a 1% raise every year, which is a pretty common thing that might happen. Imagine though instead that you took that $45,000 salary and negotiated it up to 50,000. And then and you get a 1% raise every year, but then because you're confident in negotiating, you also try to negotiate yourself a 4% raise every 3 years, which is not an unreasonable thing to do if you've been building up accomplishments over time. So if you compare those two scenarios, by retirement age, person in scenario one would be making $70,000 a year. Person in scenario two would be making $120,000 a year. And that over the course of your lifetime is over $1 million in difference. So the fact that you can become comfortable with negotiation and use it to your advantage is a huge impact on your career over time. Okay. So Ann, thanks for joining us. And I just want to kick it off by saying, one of the biggest questions I get from students all the time, right, is they come in and we start talking about this. They say, when do I bring it up? When do I start this conversation? What would you say to that?
I would say it will often come up in a first phone screen. So you want to have done your research before that. And I'm very, very big on research. And you can do this in a number of different ways. You can ask around people you know in the field. You can ask your professors or even other students or colleagues who are interviewing. One thing you can do is look online. So PayScale, Indeed, SalaryWise, all of these websites, LinkedIn also will have some salary information. They'll give you a range. It's going to be 30,000 to 40,000, or sometimes they're really big ranges. But if you collect information from a bunch of different sources, you can start to figure out what that real range is. One way to do this really is asking people in the field. So if there's someone you know and they're working at the job that you want, or they used to have the job that you want, you could say to them, hey, what would a reasonable range be to ask for? So you're not asking them, how much do you make? You're sort of asking them, how much do you make? And they're able to tell you in a more comfortable way. So I would say have that research done before the initial phone screening, because if you apply for a job, a recruiter may say, hey, do you have 20 minutes to chat? Often that's the first kind of contact you have with them. And they might say, what are you going to be looking for here? I would say if it doesn't come up in the initial phone screening, have the first interview, really knock their socks off. Then in the second interview, I would bring it up, particularly at the beginning of your career when you still have negotiating power, but you may have less negotiating power than further down the line when you've racked up those great accomplishments. Wow them, and then you're in a better position to negotiate.
Yeah, I think that's great. I would also add too, um, for anyone that's in college and certainly here at Quinnipiac, if students have questions about salary stuff, so all the tools you mentioned and the techniques you mentioned, I 100% agree with all of that. The one missing tool that students don't often know that we have is in the Career Center. We keep track of the salaries of recent graduates over the course of several years. And so if you're out there and you're doing your research and you're still not quite sure, you can come to us and we can actually look up. We're never going to tell you individual salaries, but we can tell you what we've actually seen students in your major or going into your field, or even with particular employers, what they've made. So yes, research 100% going in is your best tool to make sure that that works. And so then I guess my second question is a follow-up on that. If a student gets an offer that's not in line with that research, right? So they've looked around, they have a pretty good feel for it, and they get essentially lowballed in that first offer. How do they approach that? How do they go about trying to actually begin that negotiation process where they've started lower?
So remain calm. If you get this offer on the phone, in person, over email, you don't have to respond right away. You can say, thank you so much. I'm really excited about this. I just need a couple days to think it over, or the weekend or the night or whatever it is. then go back to that research. Also go back to your list of accomplishments, which I call a brag book. This is not a term that I coined. I heard it somewhere else. I thought it was a really good idea. I recommend all my clients do this. It's just a list of your accomplishments. And for students, it doesn't have to be on the job. It could be at an internship or on a job. It could also be great coursework you've done. It could be papers or research that you've done. That it's anything that's going to show this new place your value. So why would they hire you? Why should they give you more money? So you can go back to them with those things and say, and you can choose if you feel comfortable doing this. I like doing it over the phone because I think you get a sense of, it's more of a conversation. You're kind of, I like to approach salary negotiation as, hey, you want something, I want something. We're just kind of collaborating on this and we're coming to an agreement that makes us both happy. So if you look at it that way, it's less stressful. It's still a little bit stressful, but it can be, you can feel a little bit more at ease if you feel like, hey, I'm worth this. These are the reasons why. I've done my homework, I've done my research, I have a lot to give to this role, and this is why you should pay me more. And you can go back to them and say, hey, you know, I've looked at the market rate for this. This really looks to be what I'm seeing. I'm driven, I'm intelligent, I've done all this great stuff. Could we look at something in the $40,000 to $50,000 range, or could we look at 48,000 rather than the 35,000 that you've given me? And if they really lowball you, like if the range is 40 to 50 and they've offered you 30 or 25, I would still ask for the market range. They might say, sorry, that's not going to work. Or they're going to have to come up a little bit. Most places are making offers that they expect to be negotiated up. So you just don't know what their top point is, and they don't know what your bottom range is. So I would say no matter what the offer is, even if it's at the top of the range, still negotiate. But especially if you're lowballed, take a breath, go back to that research, go back to your brag book, and come back to them with that research and information.
So you mentioned something in there that I think is key, and it's one of the challenges I see with students all the time, and I actually see it in the steps even before we get to salary negotiation, which is a real, and it's even in the nature of calling it a brag book, which I agree with. I think that's a standard thing that we've talked about for years in the industry. But some students are super uncomfortable bragging, or even talking about what are concrete and definable, quantifiable accomplishments, things that they've done. They feel like that is bragging, as opposed to accurately representing their record. How do you sort of overcome that sense if you're working with someone?
I think it's difficult. This is something I personally struggle with, and coach other people through myself. I think that if you think of it as, hey, if I don't tell this person what I've done, they don't know. I think often as a student too, you maybe have had the same professors for years and you've been with the same colleagues or sort of cohort for years. They know you. You don't have to tell them all of your great accomplishments, but this person is a new person. They don't know you. They don't know you from the other candidates. So of course they've seen your resume and a cover letter, but to really kind of paint the picture of this is what I can do for you, and really, I'm using the term sell yourself, but it's representing yourself. I think if you think of it as, I may not get this job if I don't share the facts about myself, and they're just facts. And I think that when you write them down, I have it in a Google Doc, you can put it in a Word doc, whatever you want, to kind of go back and look at those things. And maybe when you're walking, to get a coffee, or you're in the shower, kind of even talk it out to yourself of how you would talk about this. I think it makes it easier. And I think a lot of it is coming up with your own language of how you're going to present this. It doesn't have to be you're not going to go in there and just start hitting them with like, I'm the captain of the soccer team and I'm amazing and I've gotten 45 goals. And it can be like, hey, I saw an opportunity to lead this team. It's something I'm really passionate about. And that's why I, applied for captain, or I really enjoyed this role because, and you can make it about why you wanted to do that certain thing or like the motivation behind it. It can be, I took on this research because I'm really interested in AI. And that's really what interests me about this role too. So I think you can talk about your motivations behind it if that makes you feel more comfortable. I also think the motivations behind it speak to the role that you're looking to get. And that person, it could be a place to connect with that person. But I think if you can remember that, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't share the facts about yourself, and maybe kind of reframing the thinking of, it's not bragging, it's just sharing the facts about yourself. You are doing yourself a disservice if you don't do that, because they don't know you.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And I think it's, I don't remember who the quote is attributed to, but somebody once said, right, it's not bragging if you did it. And I think that's if you frame it as the facts, and here's my sort of proof of those facts, right? It's not my opinion of myself. I think that's an easy way to start to overcome that a little bit more. I also like too that you've touched a couple times now on the idea, which is sometimes challenging for students, once you're out in the world a little bit and you're in jobs that more easily allow you to quantify accomplishments and to say, you know what, I raised sales by 30% this quarter, give me some money, right? It's harder when you're a student and maybe you don't have as much work experience. And I think it's great you're touching on the idea of sort of pulling from their experiences that are classroom or activity based and using that as that justification, because I think that that's a challenge for finding somewhere to anchor that argument is a challenge for a lot of students.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be if you've been working at Dunkin' Donuts as a cashier handling money through your college career, you're handling money, your employer is trusting you to lock up, you're dealing with customers. These are skills that are applicable in every job. So if you've been nannying, taking care of someone's kids, maybe you're organizing their day, or you're like helping with their education, or those things are, I think a lot of times we downplay, again, like things that we've done. And those are skills that you have. You might not be, the owner of a business, or you can't have 30 years of experience. You're 22. So, and you're not applying for jobs that require 30 years of experience. So really think about, if you had a summer job as a lifeguard at the beach, you have training, you were trusting people with, like, people trusted you with their lives. All of that stuff you can talk about in a job interview. It's really, a lot of what I deal with clients is feeling like I don't have any skills that are applicable. And it's more about kind of translating those skills and really breaking down, okay, what have I done? What are kind of the basics of what I've done? How do I translate that in a job interview?
And so then we get to sort of the other side of this, right? So what's the offer? One of the other challenges I see frequent with students is they know that a job pays them money. Mm-hmm. And they know that the job also gives them some other stuff, but oftentimes they're a little unclear on what that other stuff is. And I'm wondering if you'd talk a little bit about the idea of when it's negotiation time, folks have a range that they can deal with salary, and that is what it is. In a lot of cases, budgets are what budgets are. Mm-hmm. What about negotiating around some of the other pieces of a compensation package?
I'm really glad you brought this up, because I think that it's something that's often overlooked, especially if no one's told you about these other benefits. You just, you don't know. So depending on the type of company you're working for, smaller companies might have less in the way of like a 401k or helping with student loans, or all kinds of stuff like that. Larger companies will tend to have more of that, but wherever you are, you can negotiate for whatever you want. So if you if you are commuting from a long distance and the day starts at 9, you could say, could I come in at 9:30 and leave at 5:30? Would that be okay? They also might help with, they might help with student loans. They might help with 401ks, which everyone should kind of get familiar with that, because if you start, especially when you're starting now, it can be just like tremendous by the time you retire. A 401k is, I'm not a financial expert, but it's often companies, when you put away a certain amount of money, they will match it up to a certain percent. So if you're making, I'm going to use $100,000 because it's easier. Say that they match up to 5%. So if you put in 5%, $5,000, they will put in another $5,000, and then you have $10,000, and that's just 1 year. So then it builds on itself. By the time you're 50, 60, 70, you've got a lot of money in there. So whatever you can put away now, definitely do that. But so if a company offers that, maybe you can get them to match up to, another percent. Maybe not, but you can also talk about, some companies will pay for your gym membership. Some companies will help with relocating or commuter benefits. Some companies have free lunch certain days. All of those things can actually be part of your total compensation package. And another really big thing to look into is the healthcare part of it. So some companies will pay, they have multiple plans, and there will be someone at the company who will talk through all of the plans with you and make sure you're making the right choice. But if they will cover all of your co-pays and have like maybe they have a stipend or something, that actually could be the equivalent of an extra $5,000-$6,000 that you don't have to pay because they're paying for your health insurance. So when you are looking at that total compensation, if they'll pay for your gym membership and it's really good health insurance, this could be like a $7,000-$8,000, extra added value. And if they'll match the 401k, that's even better. So this is something to look around at, what other companies are offering. Often, like at the bottom of a job description, it will say competitive benefits with dental, vision, 401k. Start to kind of look at those and see what's available and what's out there. And these are things that you could ask for in your interview. But you can ask for anything you want. So keep that in mind too.
Yeah, I think that sometimes folks don't know that they can be as creative as that and starting to ask for different things. And like, as you said, right, that's in some cases what seems like a small difference from like one health insurance plan to another, for example, is a big chunk of money if you were paying that yourself. So total compensation is what you always have to focus on, right? And that actually relates to one of my last questions, which is one of the things we've seen with the pandemic and now a lot of people working from home is that some of that has worked itself in that some employers offer, technology stipends because you're working from home, or other forms of compensation to compensate you for the fact that you have to sort of bear some of the costs they would have borne in a work environment. But beyond that, in terms of the negotiating side of things, have you seen any effect from COVID on sort of the way that employers will negotiate with new hires?
I have read more about it than I've seen in my own sort of client pool. But I think if you are doing the same job, you should be paid. You should be paid for your expertise and your contribution. So I think if there are reasons why they couldn't pay you a certain amount of money, or maybe there is like actually, no, I can't think of any reason why they would be paying you, less money. I also think if you can't pay someone, you shouldn't be hiring people. So keep that in mind. They've posted the job. They should have enough money to pay you. It's not your responsibility to make a company feel good or, do work for free. I think as a student, the overall value of a job offer, you should also take into account, okay, if if I'm lowballed, but this is going to get me where I want to go, it's going to help me make connections, and I just want to get started, consider that. I think that's part of the value of a first or second job too. I wouldn't say take a job that feels really wrong, but if you think, okay, I can do this for a year, I think I can make this work, I would consider it, because that's valuable too. The experience you can get to take you to the next job could be valuable to you too. But I do think that it's good to bring up that the coronavirus angle, because I do think if you don't have a laptop, they need to get you one. Like they need to give you what you need to do this job. And if you need a second screen, or you need a keyboard, or you need you can ask for a standing desk, you can ask for a new chair, you can ask for all these things. It shouldn't really be, it shouldn't be your responsibility to have the materials that you need to do the job that they're paying you for. So like notebooks and pens and all that kind of stuff, if you have it laying around, great, but the company should really be paying for, for all of those materials. And another thing I forgot to mention, and the other thing you could ask for, is professional development and ongoing education. So if you work sometimes for a university, some of that will be part of the deal. Like maybe you can audit classes or you can get a degree. But if there's something, like if you're going into graphic design and there's like the next step up, or maybe you're going into like a culinary job and there's like the next step, or you want to get into pastries, or whatever it is, if it would help you in that job, it's worth asking if they'll contribute to it or pay for it. There are all kinds of programs on public speaking, and just like, there's so many courses on everything, and it could be a master's degree, or it could be, hey, this is $1,000 course on copy editing. I really want to do this, and I really think it's going to improve our work if I know, AP style, or whatever it is. So that's another thing to ask for too, which is valuable to you because you take that on to your next job as well.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful too, because I think, a lot of the times the budget associated with salary is locked and has levels of approval within an organization, whereas asking for some money contributed towards professional development is often requires less approval and is from a different bucket that might be more flexible. Mm-hmm. And I think, there was a long period of time where professional development that was compensated by an employer, the largest way that would have been done would have been paying for contributing to another degree. Mm-hmm. And in lots of circumstances, another degree may or may not be helpful, but there are these other smaller things that are really helpful to kind of advance you and help you do your job better. And everybody should be willing to be more open to that. So I think it's good to bring those into the conversation. Mm-hmm. Anything else in sort of the grand scheme of things? Anything else we didn't cover that would be critical for a student to know?
I really think the research component cannot be overestimated, doing that research, and really just, I really think that the idea of a salary negotiation, it's not combative. It's not, you should be on the same team. This person is going to be perhaps this could be your boss that you're working with every day. Sometimes you're negotiating with like an HR person or a different person than you'll be working with every day, but you're going to be part of this company. So you want to feel valued. They want to feel like they're, getting a good deal. I also think a lot of companies will respect you for negotiating and saying, hey, I'm worth X dollars. And what I tell people in total compensation, what I always tell clients is, if you feel like you're asking for a little bit too much, you're asking for the right amount. If you know that you're going to get it, it's not enough. Ask for a little bit more than you think you're going to get. And it allows them to come down. But I've had clients ask for a little bit more and then they got it. So I think it also helps with, if you're having like a bad day 6 months in, you're not going to be as resentful. If you feel like I asked and I did everything I could do, and I feel good about this. I feel good about my decision. So research, go in with like a collaborative mindset of we're both going to benefit from this. We're on the same team, and you can like breathe throughout this. It doesn't have to be a fast thing. It shouldn't be a fast thing. It should be considered and thoughtful, and just whenever you need to kind of take a breath and reset, you can do that. And you can negotiate over email, you can do it over the phone. In person is probably not an option right now, but just really think about what makes you comfortable. This can be stressful. There's no way to do this where it's not stressful. I think at the beginning, someday you'll get to the point where it's kind of fun, but right now, just research, be collaborative, and think of the overall compensation package. And yeah, just I think just good, and good luck to all these new students. I think right now there is more hiring happening certainly than we saw at the beginning of this year. So I feel confident about the direction that everything is going.
That's great. So thank you so much, Anne, for joining me today and having this conversation. I think this is a critical topic for our students, and I know they're going to benefit from having heard all this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.